Chapter 3. When Cassie stepped inside, she saw that her classmates were clustered together in the front of the room. Professor Lucretia Delphinus is either teaching the class how to shoot hollow dice, or the Starlandian creature's already here, she thought with a grin. But she had no one to share her little joke with. Cassie had a well-deserved reputation as a quiet girl who liked her privacy and never spoke out of turn, and her classmates respected this and tended to leave her alone. She was okay with that. Still, she thought, as she stood uncertainly at the front of the class, it would be nice if someone would turn around and say hello, or move over to make room for me in the circle. But she wasn't surprised that no one did. What was disappointing to her was that she knew her fellow classmates, and sometimes professors as well, often took her reserved nature for aloofness, or, worse yet, thought she had nothing to contribute. She did have a lot to offer. It was just that she liked to get all her thoughts in order before she opened her mouth. She didn't like idle chit-chat, throwaway comments, or speaking for the sole purpose of hearing herself talk. She couldn't fathom being like Gemma, who could make small talk with anyone, teachers, students, parents, staff, strangers. Gemma was quite well liked because of it. But Cassie found the girls' constant chatter simply exhausting. The one place Cassie truly felt at ease was among her fellow star darlings. They seemed to appreciate her thoughtful, deliberate responses and had learned never to rush her to speak her mind before she was ready. She felt as if she had found her place. That's why all the strange things that were going on were making her feel extra nervous. How she hoped it wasn't a fellow star darling who was responsible. That is, if anything is going on, she reminded herself, hearing Vega's voice of reason in her head. There could be a logical explanation for everything, couldn't there? The crowd of students hadn't shifted an inch. Cassie stood on her toes to try to peer over them, but as she expected, it was useless. She overheard snippets of conversation. "How startastic!" And, "I can't wait to guess what the wish is." She bit her lip in anticipation. "Okay, class, time to get started," Professor Lucretia Delphinus called out. "Everyone to your seats." The girls reluctantly scattered, and Cassie headed to her desk. She plopped down into the chair, which immediately adjusted to her height, build, and preferred seating position, the ultimate in classroom comfort. Vega had told her that the seats in Wishworld classrooms were hard and rigid. That didn't make sense to Cassie at all. She couldn't imagine how you could pay attention to your lessons when you were uncomfortable. Now that the students were all seated, Cassie was frustrated when she realized that she still couldn't see the creature. Her professor, a tiny woman in a voluminous, swirly purple and blue skirt that looked like a moonstorm, was somehow positioned in a way that precisely blocked her view. She craned her neck, but she was unable to see behind the woman. "Star greetings, students," said Professor Lucretia Delphinus. "Welcome to your first wish identification workshop. Today we will be granting the wishes of our special guest, Micah." She stepped to the side, and Cassie finally caught a glimpse. The creature was sitting in the middle of the teacher's desk, staring into space. Cassie felt her spirits drop. It wasn't a majestic Glion who could be wishing to climb to the top of the Crystal Mountains and graze on the rainbow lichen that grew there, or a Galliope who might want to take a lucky student for a ride on his broad back, her fingers laced through his glittering mane. She would not be hearing the bellowing call of the many-antlered Twinkleope anytime soon. No. That day, they would be guessing the wishes of a much smaller and decidedly less glamorous creature. A creature Cassie knew almost as well as she knew herself. A gloafer. Cassie shook her head and laughed to herself. This wasn't going to be challenging at all. She sighed and waited for the class to begin. The professor continued. We'll be honing our wish identification skills as we try to determine exactly what Micah is wishing for this morning. She clasped her hands together and smiled at the students. I'll start with an easy question. Who can tell me what type of creature Micah is? Hands shot into the air. Cassie kept hers down. Too easy. Gloria, said the professor, pointing to a student with a pinkish-orange glow. Cassie liked her. She had a sweet disposition and was exceedingly polite, a trait Cassie admired greatly. Moonbug, said Gloria. But her brow wrinkled as the words came out of her mouth. No, that's not right. It's a gloafer? Interjected a student named Arabelle disdainfully. She snorted. Even my baby sister knows the difference between a gloafer and a moonbug. I knew that, Gloria said. She looked around the room, appealing to her classmates. I really did. Cassie gave Gloria an understanding smile, though really, who could mix those two up? And turned to bestow a frown on Arabelle, who had dusky purple curls and a deceptively sweet round face. You were not supposed to react negatively to your classmates. That was one of Starling Academy's basic rules. Being kind and supportive, no matter how silly you thought a comment or question was, helped create an atmosphere of civility and support, which encouraged sharing and open dialogue, per the student manual. Arabelle had apparently skipped that chapter. Be kind, Arabelle, the professor said in a warning voice. She might have been tiny, but her toughness was legendary. Her eyes flashed with annoyance. That's what we are here for. To learn, of course, but to do so in a supportive way. There are no incorrect answers. We learn from everything that is shared in this classroom, accurate or inaccurate. There is no room for negativity here. Arabelle pouted, clearly not comprehending her teacher's words, just her scolding tone. Cassie wasn't surprised. The purple-haired girl was part of a group of first-years whose ringleader was a student named Vivica, who had been particularly rude to the Star Darlings from day one at Starling Academy. Arabelle was just as kind and understanding as her pale blue friend Vivica, which is to say, not at all. Cassie watched as Gloria's face burned brightly with embarrassment. Cassie felt sorry for the girl, but was quick to notice that she flushed a very pretty shade. Whenever Cassie blushed, her cheeks turned a silvery shade that she thought was very unflattering. Professor Lucretia Delphinus pointed to the gloafer, who gazed at the class serenely. Class, please say hello to Micah, the professor instructed. Star greetings, Micah, said the class, and Micah rewarded them with a few notes from the Song of Meeting New People. His singing was very pretty, though slightly muffled thanks to his bulging cheeks, stuffed with green globules. Cassie smiled. Gloafers were notoriously greedy. The golden star on Micah's belly glowed in greeting. The students all oohed and awed, as you would do if you didn't have a pet gloafer who lived in your room and glowed its star belly at you every morning. The creature blinked its large eyes at the students. A sigh went up. She's so cute, Arabelle cried. Actually, she's a he, corrected Cassie gently. But really, how could the girl not see that his belly star was half the size of a female's, the surest indicator? Whatever, said Arabelle with a shrug. Cassie shook her head. Some starlings. So, what is this gloafer wishing for? The professor asked the class. Concentrate and pay attention to the signals. This will be the most challenging part of your wish missions. Wishlings make many wishes, sometimes several a day. The key is to deduce their special wish. The students all stared at the gloafer, who looked right back at them, his large eyes serious, his little paws buried in the fur on top of his head. So that's it, thought Cassie. His wish was suddenly so apparent to her, it was like it was stamped on the middle of his furry little forehead. She felt a rush of positive energy flow through her. Piece of pie, she thought, using a Wishworld expression her roommate had taught her. She looked around, waiting for someone to pick up on the obvious clue. "He's hungry," called out a girl named Tansy. "Yes, that's it. Micah wants his breakfast," a blue-tinged classmate chimed in. "That's not it," said the professor. "Try again. When you figure it out, you may feel a burst of energy, but unfortunately that doesn't happen for everyone." Cassie yawned. With a quick glance to make sure that her professor's attention was focused elsewhere, she slipped her Stars app into her lap and flipped it open. She began composing a hollow text message to Vega and Scarlet. "Do either of you have early lunch? We could meet up." "Second lunch." "No, last lunch, and I'm already hungry." "Then meet after SD class? What a mess in the caf this morning, huh?" "That was crazy. Sounds good." "Okay with me." "We have to figure out how to get our hands on those flowers. Any ideas?" "Vega? Scarlet? You two there? Hello?" Still no response. Cassie tried to keep an eye on her screen, as well as on her teacher. She stole a glance at Micah, whose pink fur was now standing up on his head in his obvious irritation. She was about to raise her hand to reveal the wish and help put the gloafer out of his misery, when her Stars app began to vibrate and beep loudly. She scrambled to silence it and dropped her Stars app on the floor. It landed with a loud clatter and slid to the middle of the classroom, out of her reach. Starf! She thought she had put it in silent mode. Her classmates stared at her open-mouthed. The room was so still you could have heard a gloafer gasp. With as much dignity as she could muster, she walked over to pick up her Stars app. The tiny professor glided over and held out her hand. Shamefaced, Cassie placed the Stars app in her palm. "Star apologies," muttered Cassie. For a girl who hated to call attention to herself, this was an extraordinarily mortifying moment. She stood in front of her teacher, unsure what to do next. "Outside," the professor said sternly, turning and heading toward the classroom door, which opened smoothly. As Cassie followed the teacher out of the room, she was well aware that all eyes, including Micah's, were on her. To Cassie's dismay, the professor began to lecture her in front of the open doorway, in view of the entire class, which seemed to be hanging on every word. "Now, Cassie, I am very disappointed in you," the professor said sternly. "You know that there is no holotexting allowed in the classroom. Your behavior was disrespectful and inexcusable." Cassie shut her eyes. This was her worst nightmare. More than once, she had dreamed of being humiliated in front of her class, and it was even more distressing and embarrassing than she had imagined it would be. What is going to happen to me? She wondered. Will she keep my Stars app to teach me a lesson? Give me an extra holo report assignment on wish identification? Or could it be something worse? She had heard rumors of a double-secret detention room for badly misbehaving students that featured uncomfortable chairs and a special light that masked everyone's glow, leaving them looking like dull wishlings. She was sure it was a star legend that upperclassmen told to scare unsuspecting first-years, but she certainly didn't want to find out. She braced herself for the punishment that was no doubt to come. The classroom door slid shut behind her silently and ominously. Cassie gulped.